So I'm here with Steve Baker from the European Research Group of Brexit MPs. First of all, your reaction to this vote going through just by one vote?
Well, it's very disappointing, of course, and earlier today we had a tie, which is extremely unusual, and the Speaker did the right thing and voted no for the status quo. That's what he's required to do. So, of course, it's very disappointing. The people who voted for this are trying to disrupt the process of leaving the EU. If only they had stood firm and had the courage to say we were willing to walk away, well, this country might have been able to negotiate a good deal instead of the appalling one that we've had to reject 3 times.
What's your take on how this bill has gone through the Commons today? Very short space of time.
It's a democratic outrage. Look, it's really important in order to hold political parties to account that the government controls the legislation that goes through the House. When I was first elected, I was quite attracted to the idea of Parliament controlling it, but I think what we've seen through this circus and pantomime is just how difficult and unsatisfactory it is. The bill's been rammed through in a way which would have been thoroughly condemned if it had been done by a government. So the whole thing is totally unsatisfactory. The truth is, members of Parliament who voted to trigger Article 50, which means you leave deal or no deal, and they should have known that. If they didn't know it, they were incompetent. Now that we're near the end, they're just panicking. Well, I'm afraid by panicking, they've really undermined the national interest and their own constituents' votes, whichever way they voted.
And what do you hope happens now? It heads across to the Lords.
Well, what I hope happens now is that the House of Lords, where there's not a guillotine on the time, will examine this bill properly like they usually do, because they certainly gave me a runaround with the EU withdrawal bill. But I rather hope that the House of Lords again will do it on this bill and will give it the level of scrutiny which this House hasn't given. If they do that, it will be up there for several days, and it probably will be of no use whatsoever as the Prime Minister approaches this emergency council. That's what ought to happen if the House of Lords behaves like it usually does.
Doesn't this all just prove, though, that the hardest Brexit you're likely to get is the Prime Minister's deal, and by voting it down, you're going to either end up with a long extension or something a lot softer than what's on the table at the moment?
Well, I completely reject this idea of hard versus soft. It comes from people who were always opposed to leaving the EU. I hear rumours it was George Osborne who came up with the idea. So I completely reject the premise of the question. What we needed is the kind of exit from the EU which the European Union offered us a year ago. But unfortunately, when DEXU ministers said we needed a free trade agreement-based Brexit, security cooperation and so on, civil servants didn't like it and worked with the Cabinet Office Europe unit to the Prime Minister, who overthrew our decision. And that's at the heart of this problem. The Chequers proposals, which we've been lumbered with now, overthrow a decent Brexit. So what I want is the Brexit which follows logically from our decision. It's the one that the European Union offered us a year ago. And unfortunately, because the Prime Minister and the government haven't been willing to deliver it, we've had just this chaos, which I warned would happen after I resigned.
And finally, the government amendment tonight, thumping defeat, 180 votes. Does this mean that the Brexiteers are starting to flex their muscles again? How do you see that?
Do you know, the truth is, I put together how we would vote. I asked people to vote with us, and incredibly, there they are, they turned out. The reality is we're trying to deliver Brexit on my side of the argument. We're trying to deliver a Brexit worth having. And what you saw tonight was people slamming together in unity against the government, trying to preserve its ability to go and ask for an extension above the heads of Parliament. So, you know, we slammed together, united, and I'm very pleased that we did.
Steve Baker, thank you very much. Another night of drama in the Commons. It'll head back over to the Lords now, and then we'll see whether this bill eventually makes it into law.
Rob, thanks very much.